that we all are concerned about students and we want them to be successful, ultimately graduate, and to do everything possible to do so. So Butler has been on this path for some time now, but it's really an area that's getting tremendous attention nationally. We see the Surgeon General is talking about the importance of not only belonging, but the impact of isolation and loneliness, particularly on young people. And the Surgeon General right now is on a multi-campus tour, five campuses across the U.S. talking about the loneliness and isolation problem. So this is a relevant time for us to be gathered here today on doing this, and we want to have this conversation and have that conversation continue later. So we're going to talk at the end about our community of practice that we're forming for the new year. So as I said, my colleagues joining me on this webinar today, led by Dr. Frank Ross, the Vice President for Student Affairs at Butler University, and Dr. Bridget Yuhas. She's the Executive Director for the Institute for Wellbeing, which is housed at Butler University. And again, I'm Christopher Quinn. If anybody has questions along the way, please add them to the Q&A section down at the bottom of your Zoom link, and we'll answer those, some as we go and some at the end. So let me turn it over to Dr. Ross and give us a bit of a background on Butler and their initiatives that brought us all together today.
Great. Thank you, Christopher, and good afternoon, everyone. It really is my pleasure to be here today talking about two topics that are near and dear to my heart in the work that we do at Butler, and that's student belonging and student well-being. I'm really excited about this discussion today and talking about specifically how we have strategically worked with the Institute for Wellbeing, which is housed at Butler, as well as our peers at Nearpeer to help improve the student experience. But let me just quickly give you a little bit of information about Butler, realizing that what we're talking about today is happening within the context of Butler, but has applicability to, I believe, all types and sizes of institutions. And I can speak specifically for the work that we've done through the Institute of Wellbeing here, having worked with large institutions, small liberal arts institutions, community colleges, entire state systems. So I really think there is great applicability. But Butler University is a private mid-sized university located in the heart of the Midwest. We have just over 5,500 students, and I would categorize our student body as highly engaged and very successful, bright students. We do pride ourselves on the fact that we are a very student-centered campus, offering small class sizes for our students. And there's a great emphasis on experiential learning for our students. As you can see on the screen, we are also proud of the fact that we are recognized by U.S. News and World Report. For the past several years, Butler University has been ranked as the top university in the Midwest. We've also been ranked as the top university for undergraduate teaching in the Midwest, as well as most innovative university, which is something that we are quite proud of. But we've also received national rankings from the U.S. News and World Report for our study abroad and first-year experience programs. And students at Butler have the benefits of a strong liberal arts education coupled with professional education across 6 different academic colleges. And another pride point for us, we recently have announced the establishment of our 7th college, which will be a 2-year college located on our campus, which is going to create opportunities for access for students across Indianapolis who historically have been underserved by Butler, allowing them to receive a 2-year degree with no debt at our institution, and then offering them a pathway to a 4-year education at Butler. It's something that's been a priority of mine since coming to Butler, and this is my 7th academic year as the Chief Student Affairs Officer, is really an emphasis on student well-being and creating a culture of well-being at our institution. And so I'm gonna, on the next slide, let you hear a little bit more about that.
What if there was a university that didn't just offer you a degree, but also gave you an environment where you could become the best version of yourself? That place is Butler, a school infused with a culture of well-being that extends far beyond the classroom. It's a place that respects differences, strengthens bonds, and gives meaning and structure to your place in an ever-changing world. At Butler, we understand you're more than just a student. You're a unique person with your own goals and challenges. Here you'll find the people and the tools to nurture your body, your mind, and your relationships as you learn and grow within a diverse, close-knit community supported by our BU Be Well framework. Everyone here is committed to one purpose: to surround you with the care and attention you need to make the most of your Butler experience. Because of Butler, if you ever need a hand, just grab the one that's always there for you.
That's terrific. And Frank, maybe next you can talk about how you form a culture, because a culture doesn't happen on its own immediately. And I know this was a very purposeful path that Butler has taken.
It was, yeah. And so I arrived at Butler in 2017, which was also the time when two major higher education associations, NERSA and NASPA, were coming together with a number of thought leaders across the country, including our colleagues from the American College Health Association. And I was really privileged to be part of that discussion, thinking about the future of health and well-being in higher education. And really what came out of that work were some really important documents talking about the intentionality of institutions. If you're focusing on student well-being, that it really has to be a comprehensive campus-wide approach, where no longer you can think only about physical well-being or mental well-being, and it can't be just within your health services or your counseling services on campus, that it truly is everyone's approach. And that really motivated me and our team at Butler to have a conversation about, if we were to form the student experience that was centered in holistic well-being, what would that look like? And this is what resulted after, many months of conversation with our faculty, colleagues, staff across campus, and our students is the establishment of BU Be Well in 2018, which became the framework for the student experience and really guides all of the programs, services, and co-curricular activities that we position for our students. There's a link on the screen so if any of our folks in the audience want to learn more about BU Be Well, you can go to our website and learn more about the 8 dimensions of our framework and how we actualize well-being for our students with that holistic approach.
That's terrific. And I know you've also hosted other institutions at Butler in order to learn some of the practices that you've adopted along the way. So that's a great opportunity for some participants today too, I'm sure. This whole idea, this concept that we're talking about it as a student problem and student concern. We all forget that in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, love and belonging is very central to what we all need as humans. So this sort of problem transcends campus. It's really a global issue. And Nearpeer, as we talk about Nearpeer in a few minutes, we'll talk about what we're trying to do about that need specifically. But next we'll go to Bridget to talk about the Institute for Wellbeing at Butler and some of the tools that you've created and are using today. So Bridget, you want to dive in and give us a little background on Butler's Institute for Wellbeing?
Absolutely. Thank you, Christopher. As Dr. Ross just went over, we adopted BU Be Well really as the foundation for our undergraduate student experience at Butler, beginning with the fall of 2018, which is also when I started my tenure at Butler as well as the Director of Student Affairs Assessment and Strategy. And so one of my big projects was to assess BU Be Well and to figure out what impacts it was having and what successes we could speak to and what areas we might need to focus on a little bit more in the future. So this is where we're really getting into that data-driven decision-making that we promised you in this webinar. So I looked at BU Be Well in a couple of different ways. If you wouldn't mind going back, Christopher.
I'm sorry. Yep.
You're okay. Thank you. On our campus, we assessed all of these different elements of BU Be Well. Do students have an awareness of it? Do they understand it above and beyond being aware of it as an idea on our campus? We looked at number of engagements with the different dimensions of BU Well, and whether or not students chose to make positive behavioral change based on the things that they learned and the ways that they were engaging. So we did all of that, which was really, really helpful for us to understand where we were going with BU Well. But as an assessment professional, I also wanted to really give my colleagues and practitioners on campus directly actionable information, because that's so helpful when we're all working with limited resources and limited time, to really be able to efficiently use those resources at our disposal, right, to best help our students. So when I looked around for other survey instruments to help me get this actionable information, I actually couldn't find one that talked about the holistic climate for well-being at colleges and universities. There are a lot of really good surveys out there that talk about individual student behaviors, or climate for other things like academic excellence and diversity, equity, and inclusion, but nothing for well-being at the time. So I actually wrote one, and it's called the Student Well-Being Institutional Support Survey. And the differentiator for SWIS is that it doesn't ask students about their individual behaviors, but it asks them to tell us how their institution is doing at supporting them along different dimensions of their well-being. And so with that information, we know exactly where students would like more support and where they think that we're doing a good job. And that gives us, again, as I said, actionable information and a really good way to direct our limited time and resources. So SWIS was really the foundation for the Institute for Wellbeing, as we've mentioned here at Butler. With SWIS and the development of that, we've been able to serve 30 institutions and more than 25,000 students. And it's really grown into allowing us to be able to share those experiences with other campuses through consulting and building some academic supports as well. And so it's just been really a great experience to see how useful these things are to other campuses and practitioners. And if we could look a little bit at the next couple of slides, it turns out that we've been able to get some recognition for the things that we're doing because they really are useful. That was the whole purpose for developing SWIS and then also the Institute for Wellbeing. So just a couple of grabs of the media coverage so far and how different campuses nationally have been able to use SWIS to direct decision-making, resource allocation, strategic planning, and ultimately to improve the campus experience for their students. So as I mentioned, we did use SWIS to assess the climate for well-being at Butler. That began in 2020, which was kind of a crazy year, as you all recall. So it was either a wonderful time to launch a well-being survey or maybe a crazy time, but we did it. And the results from that really served to give us the data that we need to strategize how to better support our students as they were coming out of the pandemic. And we were all kind of trying to figure out what does this new phase of higher ed look like. So I highlighted a couple of areas that popped for us on our SWIS results that we really wanted to address in order to help improve our student experience. A lot of those things had to do with social connection and engagement with others, awareness and understanding of resources on campus, opportunities to meet other students and engage with folks who are different, and also engage in activities on campus. And so with all of this on our plate, we were really excited to dig in. And one of the solutions that we were able to take advantage of was a partnership with Nearpeer. And so I believe Christopher is going to tell us a little bit more about how that actually looked on our campus. But now you know the why behind why we reached out to Nearpeer and the issues and kind of gaps in our experience that we were really looking to address.
That's terrific.
Christopher.
Thank you, Bridget. And I think one of the key things here that you've touched on is this idea of assessment is a first step, right? We do the assessment, we get a view of what the reality is and where we need to focus more attention and resources, and then taking some action is next. And I think that's where Nearpeer came in on the continuing evolution, because you're doing so many great things at Butler University today. And then later we'll also talk about the importance of reassessing, see what was the effectiveness of what we've done to keep that sort of flywheel of improvement going through the years, because this is an ongoing process for you, I know, at Butler. So, what is Nearpeer? Just a little quick background here. Nearpeer, our sole focus is to build belonging and community amongst college students, and be a place for staff to have a communication channel to students as well. So really, we see ourselves as very different from anything else that's out there. And you see from some of the press coverage that we have below, and some more recent ones that I'll talk about in a moment, the external world is seeing that we're really different from, say, social media, which is widely used by all students, but it has some differences from what we do with Nearpeer. And our platform is a peer engagement platform, making it easier, catalyzing new student connections is what it's about. And we've built this in the most ethical way, following ethical design principles, which is really sort of critical. It's a safe and healthy environment for your students to be in. What we're particularly proud of is that the students with the highest need really find great value in Nearpeer, and that affects their behaviors and the outcomes associated with that. Just last week, we're really proud of this. Forbes covered Nearpeer and our work at one of the Cal State University system schools. And, we love the title of the article, as you can imagine, a college recruiting tool that's proven to work. So we're really right there with you, Bridget, on data and the importance of data and understanding where we're having an impact overall. University of Business a couple of weeks ago covered us because of our specific impact on priority populations, and in this case, Black students who were a priority population for Cal State University Northridge, that we'll see a little bit more about later. We serve the entire spectrum of students and in other arenas as well. We're talking about first-year students here today with Butler University, transfer students, international students, the non-traditional students, students who are parents themselves and non-traditional age. But we also serve parents of students. We do that at Butler as well. Lifelong learners, where the average age of a student is, late 70s at the lifelong learning institutes, including our work at Virginia Commonwealth. And we're also moving into working with employees, both at universities and in the corporate world. So for a little background on Nearpeer, I want to share something here. So the front end of this is part of the way that one of our campuses promoted Nearpeer to its students. And again, the full spectrum of schools, from medium private institutions to a very large public. This is how a Cal State school launched this to their students and told them a little bit about it. So you'll hear from the student government leaders first, and then get a little 2-minute glimpse into the user experience inside Nearpeer.
Congratulations on your admission to CSUN. Hi, my name is Cheyenne Moshtail, and I serve as your Associated Students Student Body President.
And I'm Edinja Shua, your AS Vice President. AS Student Leadership serves as the primary advocate for students of this campus. We're here to represent you.
And this is a special university, and as fellow students, we believe that a special sense of belonging here is incredibly important. And what better way to do that than with Nearpeer? We've devised a new system as fellow students to be able to create a sense of belonging for incoming students, be them local, transfer, or international students.
Nearpeer is an app that will help you connect with your classmates before you come to campus this fall. You'll be able to find people in our community that share the same interests as you, such as travel, music, sports, and TV shows. You'll also be able to join student groups, such as transfer students, orientation groups, and LGBTQIA+, and more.
Welcome to the CSUN community. Now go find your people, and we'll see you this coming August.
This next section is
Hey CSUN students! Invited to join Nearpeer and want to know what it is? Nearpeer is a new, really easy way to discover other students at your college who you have tons in common with. But what's different about Nearpeer? Platforms such as Instagram or Facebook can be good to stay connected with people you already know. But what about figuring out who you want to get to know? Nearpeer does just that. It helps you find other students at your college with shared interests, majors, life experiences, and more. Create a profile, enter your interests, a quick bio, career goal. You decide how much to share about yourself. And you're in. Now check out your peers by clicking the Discover tab. Nearpeer's matching algorithms instantly show you who you have the most in common with at your college. To meet peers, you don't have to introduce yourself in a large group if you'd rather not. Just connect and engage one-to-one. And if you're a transfer student, veteran, or international student, Nearpeer helps you find others with shared experiences. Wondering which students live near you or have a hometown near yours? Tap Find Peers to search by location, and then see what else you have in common. On a peer's profile, press Connect, and when they accept, you can message directly to get the conversation started. Use the My Groups tab to discover the groups created just for your college. Nearpeer is the single best way to meet the students at your school that you're most likely to really connect with.
So that's a little bit of background on Nearpeer, but Dr. Yuhas said that the first place where Swiss was administered was at Butler. And so you learned some things about Butler that she shared some of those highlights there. What did you do with it, and how did Nearpeer fit into that?
Yeah, and I thank you. I think it's, as we look at our student experience and wanting to take a data-driven approach to improving that, I think Swiss was really helpful to hear from our own students. I mean, we had administered surveys in the past that asked them about health behaviors, how much sleep do they get, how often do you work out, et cetera, et cetera. But this was the first survey of its kind that really asked students about the climate for well-being and what were we doing at the institution to support their well-being and what could we be improving on? And that was really powerful. So I think the data from Swiss regarding social connection and engagement is something I definitely want to highlight. But another concurrent process for us is we were really taking a hard dive looking at our first year experience. And as an institution, had spent 2 years doing a self-study with the Gardner Institute in a process called the Foundations of Excellence that really helped us do a self-study of what was the experience for first-year students at Butler University like, both inside and outside of the classroom. We had about 100 faculty and staff from across the university engaged in this process that resulted in over 50 recommendations for the university for how we can continue to improve our first-year experience. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're already recognized by U.S. News and World Report as having one of the top first-year experiences in the country, but we want to continue improving what we offer for our students. And so I think germane to this conversation, there were a number of outcomes from that process that led me to look for a partner such as Nearpeer. So first is feedback that our students were seeking greater connections. And so our first-year students were highly engaged on campus, but finding connections with peers and people that had similar interests was really something we were hearing clearly from our first-year students that they were seeking. Another recommendation that came from our work was the need to have greater communication between the university and the first-year students. And similar to the Swiss data that Bridget has showed recently, students were wanting to have more understanding about resources on campus. So this connected very clearly with what the Swiss instrument had already told us. But then there was another outcome for us, and it was really around families and how can we have greater outreach from the university with families and parents of our first-year students, and how do we maintain that common connection? But also, how do we help connect the connection between the family to family? And so we were looking for someone to help us in these efforts. And then here came Nearpeer. What I'll also add is concurrent to this work, ironically, my Student Government Association had gone to their national conference and they came back so excited. And Dr. Ross, we want to tell you about this new company that we met with called Nearpeer. Our students saw this demonstration at their conference and were so excited, thinking this would be a great tool for us to implement at Butler to help new students learn to meet each other and learn about opportunities on campus.
Terrific. And I think the students love this tool is really central to this. It's meeting a real need for them. I think is absolutely critical. So you decided to launch Nearpeer, and really had to communicate this to students, and these are some of the ways that you did that along the way at orientation, through email and through Instagram, all the places where students might see a message about a tool like this. So this happened last fall. This is our first year working together with Butler.
Right.
Nearpeer has been around for since 2018. And so we're so proud to have Butler on board and using Nearpeer, and your students really loved it too. Here you see an example of a student's profile, anonymized here. A lot of information they can share in Nearpeer. So this is how students are able to paint the entire mosaic of themselves and who they are. There are about 2,500 different interests, affinities, affiliations that students can put into Nearpeer. So in this actual student profile that we see here, we see things like their major and when they started, pretty routine there. But of all the things they like, what are their passions? They get to choose 5 of those. They write a little bio about themselves, and share their pronouns, their hometown. It's hard to find who else is coming from my state when you're going out of state to a place like Butler University. But here, if you share it, you can find people in Nearpeer that way. Career aspirations, interests, bucket list goals. You see some of the specificity that's here. The students really have a fun time with this. And then our matching algorithms in the background match students with those students with whom they share the most in common, making it very easy to connect. So we'll see a little bit more of that in a moment. But here, if you take a look at this, this is matched. One student's profile is matched, and this student came up, and we saw that one of the students, you share interest in writing, photography, and 10 other things. So as a user, this is how the other students have shared up, saying, wow, let me look at this person and see we really share 10 things in common, and what are they? So we see some of the passions across the top there, things like playing the violin. But I see here that poetry was one of the things that was matched on. So when we think about big macro communities and micro communities, when people find their people, it's around all those things that they like. And sometimes people think that there's not going to be anybody else there who likes those things that I like. And this helps break down those barriers. And that's how we're making a difference. Because then the students can have an interaction here in an anonymized exchange between students. They saw you like poetry. It's like we saw in that match of the profile. Who are some of your favorite poets? And this is an actual Butler student saying, Henley and Plath and Frost, and going on and on. These people are starting to feel like I found some of my people here, which is pretty powerful overall.
Christopher, can you go back? I wanted
Sure.
to point out something. So, I mean, when we talk about authentic engagement, this is what it is, right? I mean, and I love using this example when I talk to our faculty colleagues about this, because these are things that you think might come up in a creative writing class or a literature class well into their first semester, right? This was time and date stamped set. This was July 11th, right? So this is well a month before these students came to campus, and they're already having conversations at this level. And so when you think about the depth of engagement that these students can have before they even step foot on campus. I think about when our students come to orientation, like we now have to completely rethink orientation, because the get to know you activities that we used to do in the past, where you asked, what's your favorite pizza, favorite movie? Students are already much deeper in their engagement and having those authentic relationships well before they step foot on campus.
Yeah, I think that part is particularly powerful. That when does a student start to consider themselves a Butler student? It's not on day one when they hit the ground on campus. It's at that point of commitment and really building this community early, and having students showing up looking for each other at orientation is quite powerful. We go from poetry to maybe the more common video gaming, and what games you like. Again, this is helping people find their people and talking the language. Once they connect, they know they share a lexicon around something, and it makes it very easy to connect. And these are the sorts of things that you wouldn't be able to find out very easily, to your point, Frank, about just running into somebody and starting a conversation, sharing one thing about yourself. one place that you can share one thing about yourself is by the groups that you join. So if you're a first gen student, you can join a group that is an affinity group for first gen students or first year student incoming. If you're a transfer student, different life experience, maybe a little older, are there other people that share that one piece? And then once you see that, the students can click on their colleagues within that group and see all the details about those other people and start to find those rich connections that they want. So we've got our first set of data coming out of Butler University now. I'll hand it over to Frank to talk a little bit about that. But with all that communication that you did about Nearpeer, over 60%, I can't remember the exact number, 65% of the students, incoming students, voluntarily adopted and started using Nearpeer.
Yeah, and I think that stat is great if you think about the fact that we launched it middle of the summer before the fall semester. And so I'm only anticipating that number to go up as we have it as part of our campus culture. So I was really, really happy with the fact we had over 60% of our first year students voluntarily sign up to use it. What was great is when they came to campus and then you saw different residence hall groups, different first year seminar classes, different orientation groups. We're then asking more students to sign up because we're using this as a communication platform. But that was 65% of our students initially on their own volunteered to sign up. What I was most impressed about is we did a survey with our students after orientation and asked them a variety of questions. But 87% of students reported that using Nearpeer helped them present a more genuine version of themselves to classmates. And so again, when we go back to thinking about being at their authentic selves and helping students make those connections, it's so amazing that almost 90% of our students said using this tool is what helped them present their authentic selves to their students on campus, which I thought was terrific. Of the students who use Nearpeer, we also wanted to get a sense of, we understand the start of schools is sometimes anxiety provoking for students. You may have fear for starting class. Has Nearpeer helped you in lessening that anxiety? And almost 40% of students who use Nearpeer say this tool is what has helped them feel less anxious for the start of the academic year. But that number is even higher in that 44% of first gen students reported this tool being successful in helping them prepare for the start of the school year, which was great for us because as we did our deep dive into the first year experience, really finding ways to better support our growing population of first generation college students was an important strategy for us. And so Nearpeer is really helping us with outreach specifically to that population.
Terrific. And, I think what we're seeing is that we're addressing anxiety, things of that nature, and it's changing student behaviors, that the summer melt goes down, retention goes up, those sorts of pieces are here. I also thought it was interesting in the survey data that you shared on this that, some people are wondering, well, what about the other 40%? And they join, and you asked that question in your survey, if you're not a Nearpeer user, why? And almost all those people said, I didn't know that we had it. So
Right.
we know with students, even if you over communicate, sometimes that message doesn't get through. Quite interesting.
I will say our orientation team on campus was really the folks boots on the ground who really helped work with Nearpeer and implement this. And we loaded all of our student orientation leaders into Nearpeer as well. So I will say it was a great way for that ongoing communication between the new students as well as with their orientation leaders. And so I think we're now building a culture of Nearpeer on campus, and I'm going to see those numbers increase next summer, definitely.
Yeah. I think we're working now with your admissions team, so more on the front end of this as well. And one of the things that you get insights around who the students are when they're saying they want to present a more genuine version of themselves, and they can do that here. That begins earlier in the process when people are making decisions about where to go to school. And I'm talking with an admissions advisor, if they can be a Nearpeer as well and see, what are the things that you like as a prospective student. That's very powerful as well. But let's hear quickly from one of your students here. This is a student that our summer intern interviewed this summer, and he'll tell you about his Nearpeer experience.
Thinking of like having to make friends, having to make these new connections, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had to do this for literally my whole life. Like I did it once in like second grade and that was it. I'm terrified. But Nearpeer has already reached out to like a gym buddy, the captain of the volleyball team. These people that like, I'm like, wow, you guys just look like good people, why don't I just reach out? And so far it's been like miraculous. And now I have like a gym buddy to go work out with at Butler before I even have stepped foot on the campus this coming year. I also even connected with the captain of the volleyball team on Nearpeer, which is so funny. And then he just started recruiting me there. So some like kids have like these crazy questions that are like, oh my God, like I want to know that too. And so like I just get to look at it and be like, okay, like this is what is happening for orientation. This is what's happening for here. And it's like a really good way to like reach out to these people that have answers to questions, as well as these people that like are also in the same spot as me. Like we're all like incoming freshmen.
So he's a pretty extroverted fellow, but still meeting a real need for him, as well as people imagine that you're not as comfortable connecting with others. This is really
thinking of like
that hurdle. I know we've got a diversity of institutions in the audience here today. We've got, I don't know, 125 people that are in this webinar with us. So we want to talk about our commitment to data and assessment overall, and at a large public university here at the Cal State University Northridge. We did a randomized control trial of the impact of Nearpeer. They have 12,000 incoming students from the summer of 22. They decided to give Nearpeer to 6,000 of those students, and the other 6,000 didn't know it existed. And then they have been tracking those students in milestones all the way through to fall of 23 enrollment, so to measure year 1 to year 2 persistence. A little bit about this institution, though. Different type of institution than Butler that we're talking about today. 74% minority enrollment at CSUN. Of the, that 12,000, 74% are minorities. 57% of those are Hispanic. So they're an HSI, and they have lots of tools for their students to use, lots of clubs, activities, support services. They wanted to know, how do we know that Nearpeer is making the impact? And that's why they embarked on this randomized control trial, which we're proud to be a partner in them with. Here are the results. We'll cut right to that. Overall, the results were over 4% higher enrollment, including all the way through to year 2. So the students not only were there, didn't melt away, they retained, they found their place in there. The outsized impact on underserved populations, like transfer students, and in this case, Black students, were a big priority for them because that's a relatively small percentage of their total population. They wanted to make sure that these students felt very comfortable and connected to the community, and 17% higher enrollment amongst the Black students. I mean, this was shocking even to us. This was such huge impact, and we're so very proud of it. So we'll move on here to you, Bridget, and how does this all fit together? How do people in the audience approach this from your perspective, the implications?
Absolutely. Thanks, Christopher. If you all are similar to me, you're probably really looking for concrete takeaways from all of the things that we've talked about today, and we've thrown a lot of information at you. So I wanted to kind of sum up with what we think might be some really good next steps for everybody here in the audience. And the first thing that we would suggest is that you start asking these questions if you haven't already. Find out from your students, how do they feel supported? What areas are going well for them? How do they feel that the institution has their back and is a place where they do belong and can make connections? And then also, what else do they want? What else do they need from their institution that might be areas of action for you, where again, you can direct your resources and time and energy. It's really important to hear directly from your students about their experiences and the things that are in our control as practitioners that we can take action on to improve the student experience. We would also suggest that you look around at your colleagues across campus, because as we're talking about belonging, well-being, and the student experience, we all know that that just doesn't take place in one place, right? It's a whole web of supports across the entire campus. Students don't experience their institution in just one area and think, oh, that's this concrete siloed office, and that's behaviors only related to that office. students experience their university as a whole, and it's really difficult for them to discern between different offices or different processes. They just see the university, right? So working with your colleagues to really enhance the collaboration and communication across campus so that it is one complete tapestry for students is really important. And then take action on your data. We've all been in situations where committees, meetings, planning has gone on for a long time. And sometimes that's really useful and really helpful. And other times you have some answers and you can take action and start to really work to improve that student experience, even in small ways, more quickly than, you know, those committees and those meetings and those things that we've all been involved in sometimes. And I know that we all have. So we would just encourage you, when you have solid data, to go ahead. Don't be afraid. Take action. Bring your colleagues with you, and involve your students as well. So all of these things can really work together to help you take strategic and well-informed action on your campus.
That's terrific. And so, Bridget, the Swiss tool that you've developed, I just want to be clear that you've administered this at lots of other places, and is it available to folks to bring to their campus?
It absolutely is. We have administered it at 30 institutions nationally. We've yielded about 25,000 student results or student responses. So we're getting a really nice data set of what support for student well-being looks like nationally. And yes, we are always welcoming other institutions to take part in really finding out what the climate for well-being is like on their own campuses. So we do have some contact information here at the end, I think, and would welcome any outreach from institutions who are interested.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. So one thing we do want to talk about is the potential to having a shared community of practice together, expanding the circle. I think we have a lot of like-minded folks on the webinar today who are dedicated to building belonging across the student journey, at every point of the student journey. And I think with Butler and Nearpeer, we said, well, let's form a community of practice, a place where we can build on the synergy that we get when working with each other, talking about what we're doing, and getting quickly to solutions overall. So, Nearpeer and the Institute for Wellbeing and the offerings that you have there, these are sort of known and proven tools. So one of the things that we're thinking about in this is that a lot of you are searching for, well, what are we going to do? We know we've got an issue with community. How big is it? Can we measure it? If so, what can we do about it? Those sorts of things. We know that we've got some things here that will jumpstart your actions. And we want to do this by meeting every couple of months across Zoom. We'll bring everybody together and begin this in 2 months into the year. We'll probably have late Q1 our first kickoff meeting. We invite everybody here to that to dive in and see if this something that you can participate in and contribute to overall. And then together we'll amplify this dedication to student belonging, and find opportunities to share this at conferences or in articles that you're writing and those sorts of things. So bringing like-minded people together just by being the webinar, we'll send you information about that as we solidify the dates coming up. Okay, with that, I want to move us to discussion and any additional questions. I know some have been answered already along the way there. Here's the contact information to reach us and the Institute for Wellbeing. You see the web links there. But with that, Frank, I want to turn it over to you and see, where are your wheels turning? What's next at Butler with the things that you're doing? Both with how we might do Nearpeer a little bit differently, but other initiatives that you have underway.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You mentioned this earlier in your comments. We are including our enrollment management team now as part of the Nearpeer family, and so really engaging students earlier in that enrollment funnel is going to be an important change for us. And so, again, getting more than 60% of students adopting, we want to make sure that we get as many of our entering students as part of the Nearpeer community as possible. So that's definitely a priority for us. I will say something that else we're looking at is as we look at our own data at Butler, but also the Swiss data nationally that Bridget is collecting, what other student characteristics are we looking at? And so I know that she's looking at the data specifically for first generation students across the country to see, what are specific needs and or appropriate interventions to better support first generation students across the board. That's going to be important for us. And just a little preview of something to come, we're also looking at it by affiliation. And so looking at students who have been involved in social Greek fraternities and sororities, how is their experience different and the impact of that involvement on their holistic well-being as well. So there's some really great data coming out of the Institute for Wellbeing on Greek affiliation that will be, again, coming out at the beginning of the new year.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Bridget, across the dozens of institutions that have implemented Swiss and that big data set that you have now, are these what Butler found? Are these common themes, or are there some other themes that you're finding with the Swiss results?
Absolutely. Butler's doing really well by a lot of national measures. An area where Butler and every institution that has administered Swiss could focus some attention is on financial literacy. Our students are really interested in learning more about all things finances, loans, budgeting, wages and compensation for potential jobs after or during school, and benefits and things of that nature. They're really interested in learning about those things and not finding a lot of resources on campus right now. And we also know from Swiss that worry and stress and anxiety about finances is in the top three for things that students are reporting impact them throughout the academic year. So they need more information. Right now, it's negatively impacting their experiences. And these are things that we can take as results and really take some quick action to address those things. There are plenty of tools out there and plenty of experts on campuses who are able to give that information and work with students. And that will help to address that issue and also lower their anxiety, which is something that I think we're all interested in doing these days. So a lot of interesting findings like that nationally.
I'll say to that point, it's, taking a data-driven approach to improving the student experience. That's something that we take very seriously. And we are assembling a team of staff and faculty next week, days literally before the holiday break, to really look at what does financial well-being mean at Butler University in both curricular and a co-curricular perspective, and what's going to be our approach on campus. And so I'm, stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some updates on that soon, but that was definitely an area of opportunity for us at Butler. And so the data is allowing us to jump in and make an improvement.
And Frank, when you think about a community of practice, and you two are already doing so much in this world, what excites you about the prospect of bringing multiple campuses, universities, and colleges together to address these have regular conversations? What are some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, when Bridget and I started this work, it really was because we had a common goal of trying to improve well-being for students at campuses across the country. And so the thought of engaging more institutions in that work is really exciting. But I realize Butler University is very different from Cal State Northridge in many ways, but we also have many similarities, right? And students, my experience is no matter the type or size of institution, students want people to pay attention to them, and they want to feel important. And that's part of belonging, and that's what this is all about. And so I'm excited to learn from peers and see what's happening at other institutions. Would love to engage with our HBCU colleagues and our HSI colleagues and our community college peers, folks from large institutions, small institutions, and really just learn from each other of how we can continue to improve the student experience, and specifically by focusing on student making connections and improving their well-being and belonging.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Perfect. Bridget, I want to turn back to you and ask a question about, this assessment action and, sort of reassessment in your world. We all see in our experiences as, senior leaders on campus that when it comes to things like accreditation and writing self-studies, that we all have to sort of look at what are we looking to improve? How are we going to do that? And how are we going to know that there's impact? When it comes to the Swiss tool, is this something that you re-administer? And if so, when do you do that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yes, we would recommend that institutions do re-administer Swiss. The cadence for Swiss is usually every other year, although I have a cohort of institutions who do administer it every year. It depends on what your institutional goals and strategies are and the metrics that you need to measure in order to track on those things. So the Swiss is so holistic, and it involves a lot of different areas across campus by intent. Because as I said earlier, students don't experience campus in one place or with one office. They experience it holistically. So being able to move the needle on a lot of different areas in a short amount of time is challenging for institutions. So that is why we recommend administering Swiss and getting a baseline and understanding of what students are experiencing at that time, and then gathering your colleagues, getting support and buy-in from cabinet level folks or other resource holders to really listen to what the student voices are saying, and then make plans and allocate resources to address those needs. And then re-administer Swiss to see how much you have moved the needle. We've seen great success at Butler between our first administration in 2020 and then our following administration in 2022, particularly around some of these social connection areas, and a lot of changes in dining and residence hall and recreation and wellness, things that we really focused on. Students could tell, and it was really a wonderful thing and very affirming to see those results tick up after our interventions. So assessment is not just about tracking the numbers, it's also about getting everybody on the same page, making sure everybody knows what the goals are and where you're going, and then being able to really affirm folks' work and action when you see those results come back in and things have changed.
Bridget, what I love about what you just said is, we often will say student success is everyone's job. And what I love about the results of Swiss is it really shows that every area of the campus can see themselves reflected in those data and see the impact that they're having on the holistic well-being of our students.
Absolutely.
There's a question that came in, Bridget, from Bridget Stewart. Is there a standard cost for Swiss, or are there factors that determine a cost range?
Yeah, the cost for every institution is $2,500. We keep it low so that it's accessible to any institution size or type. I also have a couple of different question sets that can be appended to the end of the main survey, and those are free of charge. One is about the climate for well-being and campus recreation services and facilities. And the other is asking questions of students about how supports for well-being along all the different facets affect their sense of belonging at their institution. And so early data are coming in from that, and it's really interesting to see some of those connections between well-being and belonging. So I'm looking forward to exploring that a little bit more.
All right, I'll give one last comment, and then Frank, we'll turn it over to you to close this out. We're almost at the bottom of the hour. So I'm glad this cost question came up, because there's a question of cost, and there's always a question of what's the return on the investment. I know in our audience today we have presidents and some chief business officers, people like that, and people want to know what value is this going to add back. And this is something that with Nearpeer we're quite proud of, that we know. if we save students, it's going to change their trajectory, but it's also going to be a high ROI for the institution in these tight budget times. That's really more important than ever. So I'll just end with it's been terrific to be here with both of you today and everybody in the audience. And here at Nearpeer, we're ready to help. We're ready to help now with your spring students if you have them, for your students next fall, your parents who connect with one another through Nearpeer. We're here to understand your challenges and how we might help solve them. So we look forward to a continuing conversation. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Frank, and you can close this out.
Yeah, thank you all so much for letting us talk about the work that we're doing to connect our students and improve their success outcomes. This has been a great conversation. I know that we're going to follow up with all the participants and send an email with our contact information, as well as more information on the community of practice. So we just, and love to engage you all, continue the conversation and learn from each other. So with that, I'll say good afternoon and wish everyone happy holidays and best wishes as you end this academic term.
Perfect. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.